What is up? All right, let's go. I'm doing my tier list for the 2020 NFL season. Not a lot of other things to do because of Corona, so might as well get this up and recorded. Let's see. Some notes I learned from last year. I was a little bit too high on some teams, a little bit too early, right? So like the Cardinals, I had a little bit higher than if I were to redo the list, I'd probably make them now. Um, but I was good on like the Niners, right? Because for various reasons, right? They had an established culture, an established system, and their quarterback got injured, and that's a great sign for positive regression. So I learned a couple things from last year. I was probably a little bit too low on some teams like the Bills or the Texans, right? Who opposite situations, right? The Texans, I kind of underestimated the growth that Deshaun Watson go through to not only be like a top 10-ish quarterback from the year prior to like a top 5 unanimous type of quarterback, and that kind of just elevate the entire team, even with a subpar roster, in my opinion. Um, and with the Bills, I underestimated how easy that schedule was going to be, combined with the coaching staff and culture in Buffalo. Right? I don't think Josh Allen got remarkably better, but he did enough to get them to 10 wins. That being said, my rankings aren't going to look like a lot of other people's because I frankly don't care about public opinion. It's more of how I think these teams are going to finish, right? So some part of it is accounting for schedule, some part of it isn't. Um, it's a lot of guesswork, right? But also I'm making educated guesses because this is a very volatile game, and I think people kind of overestimate the influence of how one year a team might be good and the next year it could easily be bad, right? Half of all playoff teams change every year. And accounting for this new 17 team playoff format, increase the amount of teams in the playoffs, it's going to be interesting. It's almost at the league. So that means more people in that fringe playoff tier, and the league is kind of condensing a bit. Although I think that there's a clear 6 to 8 teams that I actually bet on, and this might be a little bit off where public consensus is, but I think once you hear my reasoning, you might agree with me. So let's do this. Um, boom, bada boom, bada boom. All right, let's decrease this a little bit. Wow, yeah, it's better. Like weird. Um, Titans. I don't think they're really in any deep playoff slash Super Bowl contention this year. Uh, perennial a perennial 8-8 9-7 type team. Um, Ryan Tannehill had one of the I think the best year of his career last year, and I think that's a little bit understated because people think that Derrick Henry is some super valuable piece to that team, and he is one of the more valuable running backs, but that position is a position of little value. And if they lean into that run game with Derrick Henry, no Jack Conklin, a younger offensive line, more unproven offensive line, the continuity will help them in the short offseason for sure. And I'm actually tempted to put them in solid playoffs, right? Just given how weak that division seems to be at right now. But I can't. It's they're probably a solid playoff team, but I have little faith in the Titans just based on their track record of simultaneously under and overperforming depending on where you have them, right? 8-8, 9-7, maybe 10-6, but first round out type team. Um, although, right, it's one of those teams that like last year they got hot at the right time and they can make some noise, but they're they have like 2% max like chance of winning the Super Bowl in my eyes, and it's not. I can't put a team like that in anywhere higher than the fringe playoffs. All right, so let's see this. Dolphins, based on that division, based on the improvements they've made. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick should start. I think he had a pretty good year last year, and Tua would be a rookie, and rookie quarterbacks tend to not be good at all, right? Like bottom five ish, especially when they don't have really that mobility aspect behind a poor offensive line. Tua is not particularly a mobile quarterback. I think he wins a lot with his mind, and the game speeds up so fast that'll, in my opinion, have to take at least a year for him to get accustomed to the game. This is a lot better than actually. Yeah, I can't put them in the same tier as the Titans. Now that I think about it, I'm gonna put them down. Now that I think about it, yeah, their defense got a lot better, right? I can't say that. I think I'm a little bit understating the where the other teams in the division are relative to the Dolphins, right? Like what I was just saying about how Ryan Fitzpatrick might be the best quarterback this year. That's a problem. Um, and how that offensive line is trash, to say it lightly, right? Like it's one of the worst offensive lines ever in league history. Um, Receiving core is solid, but not enough to make up for how bad that protection is. And then Tua isn't Drew Brees yet, although you could make the argument that he will become that, right? In the coming years once he develops. But that offense is whew, almost as bad as the Patriots, right? Another team in that division. That division is going to be the crapshoot this year, and I can't wait to watch because I have a little bit of change on it. Um, let's see this. Hey, let's do this. Browns. Where am I going to put them? Solidly playoffs. I think that a classic post-hype team, a team I was a little bit too high on, like a lot of other people were last year. We expected a lot of pieces to come together super quick, and Baker Mayfield to somehow turn into, I don't know, Drew Brees in a year. Um, Now with actual head coach, that's not like a college level head coach. Um, they got a lot better on the offensive line. They went from one of the worst offensive lines in the league to possibly one of the best. And that jump alone is wonderful for offensive consistency. So I expect the Cleveland Browns to have at least their first winning season in whoever knows how long, I think this century. So good luck to them. The Jags. All right, I don't want to get burned, but like they have a roster that talent that is worthy of a number one pick, right? They are probably the 32nd roster in the league. That being said, they're not like other 32nd rosters in the past, right? They're in much better position than, let's say, the Dolphins from last year, right? Or the Bengals ish, even though they benched a lot of their starting players. They have a lot of upside on that team. And if Gardner Minshew can take a step up, because he was one of the better rookie quarterbacks last year, if he can take a step up, then this team could easily go again to the fringe playoff contender in a lackluster division. So I'm less inclined to put them in the number one pick tier. But yeah, no, I'll put them in the try again next year. Just based on what I just said, I think this team has a little bit too much upside for me to be comfortable placing them as really the 32nd team in the league or in that conversation. Even though they have that type of roster, I don't know if I've lost enough faith in, like, I think I have a little bit of faith in Gardner Minshew to put it all together and this team to be pretty good. Not pretty good, no, it's going to be trash, but like not like top 10, not top 5, like that level of okay. And maybe if a couple more pieces outside Gardner Minshew, like in that receiving core and the tight end group, and Gardner Minshew put it together, this offense could be sneaky good. And so that's the main reason I put them here. Teams that are probably not going to be good, but a little bit of upside and give them another year, right? Try again next year. That's the name of this tier. Lions. This is going to be one of my more controversial picks, right? Solid playoff tier. I think that this is a classic. Their quarterback got injured when they were a hyper efficient offense. They were incredible top 10 level offense last year. Wait. Right. I think it goes understated in a lot of sports analysts blogs, writings, streams, words, right? Like how efficient offense that the Lions ran last year. I think Matt Stafford was a sneaky great quarterback when he was healthy last year, and before he got injured, the Lions had, I think, were 500 with some really iffy, fluky losses in a small sample size. That defense got demonstrably better. Is going to get demonstrably better this year thanks to a lot of the free agent signings just to plug up a lot of the holes on that defense. Um, I'm definitely buying in the Lions. I think if you're going to bet the over on any team in the entire league, I think it's the Lions. I think they're very much undervalued in this grand scheme of the NFL media landscape, and by a lot of the people who don't really pay attention to what's happening in Detroit. Watch out for the Lions, dog. Let's see. I also think Matt Patricia is an underrated defensive coach, and that their offensive coordinator is actually pretty good. Um, producing, he would sending Matt Stafford to one of which was going to be one of his better seasons, maybe his best, before injury. All right, so let's see Vikings. French playoffs, right? They don't have a secondary outside of their safety, best safety duo in the league, right? But when I say secondary, I mean I'm primarily talking about their corners, right? They probably have the worst corner group in the league, and it might not be that close, right? They got rid of all their starting corners, and they replaced a lot of them with rookies and in a shortened offseason. I'm not really on board with all of them gaining a lot of experience and being able to produce at an even decent level in their rookie year. But like I can't argue with the coaching staff, Mike Zimmer and his boys up in Minnesota, to be able to put something on the field that can, if the dice roll the right way, they can be a French playoff contender, first round exit type of team. I think a lot of that's due to the fact that they're paying a quarterback like Kirk Cousins so much of their salary that they can't really fill out a lot of the holes. But that's a conversation for another day. And I'll give the Vikings what they're due and put them in the French playoffs. All right, Bucks. If I were to like order this list, let's say inward, outward, I put the Bucks like as the best solid playoff team. I think I don't know if the record's gonna reflect that, just because Tom Brady is going to a new system and a lot of moving pieces are happening in Tampa. So I'm not entirely sure that everything's going to be thrown together at the start, especially with the shortened offseason. But if there's one quarterback I expect to do that, it's Tom Brady. So I'm definitely putting them in solid playoff tier, fringe Super Bowl contender. Especially, I can definitely see a scenario which it's like, week 16, the Bucks are like a 10-win team, 9-10-win team, just made in the playoffs, but they're definitely like they're a top 5, top 3 team in the league based on those last like 4 weeks, and that the momentum's building and they're ready to make some noise in the playoffs. Like I can see that being it. I think they're one of those teams that are very likely to just be like a slow burn, right? They're going to start slow and then it really pick it up in January. That's what I'm expecting. All right, 49ers, Super Bowl contenders. Enough said. They were in the Super Bowl last year, but that's not enough, right? They lose a lot of pieces. Still have Kyle Shanahan. Still have that defensive line still stacked. I think they're in the lower tier of Super Bowl contenders. I think that some of the other teams are going to put in here are better positions just based on yearly variation and variability, right? That secondary was surprisingly good. How long can Sherman still play at an elite level, right? His coverage itself is a murky kind of changes year to year type of position and ability. So if that coverage group regresses even a bit, then this team's in trouble, right? Their identities with their defense, and maybe Jimmy G gets better. That's a factor that keeps them in Super Bowl contender in my eyes, right? Their offense still has some upside, which is the biggest thing. Although I think that defense will probably regress. All right, Chicago. I'm really tempted. To put them in number 1 pick. I'm really tempted. They really feel like that type of. We have a couple injuries on defense, and then our entire team falls apart. Team. I think they're a try again next year type team. I don't know if I really believe in that quarterback situation. I love Matt Nagy, but how much can you really do to take a bunch of backup quarterbacks, Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky's, to the playoffs? This was one of the good takes I had last year. I was lower on the Bears than consensus, and because Mitch Trubisky was still Mitch Trubisky, but people had rosy-eyed a kind of lens to him, even though he hadn't really proven much in terms of actually watching him do good quarterback things. Be a good quarterback and be accurate, make good decisions, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the most important position on the field. And if that's capped, then I think your playoff and Super Bowl success is capped over the duration of the season. Falcons, French playoffs. This one's pretty easy, right? That defense is going to be absolutely horrible. Probably one of the worst defenses of the league, if not the worst. But that offense is going to be explosive. And when I say explosive, I mean explosive. Get Matt Ryan in your fantasy leagues. Am I getting this team to, over 7.5 or whatever the win total is? No, not at all. I'm staying far away from that. That team has no depth on either side of the ball. But they're definitely going to be a high-scoring, high-flying offense, and that can get you some places. And if a couple breaks go their way, a couple picks, a couple fumbled balls go their way, they can definitely win a couple games, 9-7, sneaking into the playoffs, 6 seed. Ravens, you said and done. We're putting them ahead of the Niners. Yeah, I don't know if there's an argument to be made that they're really going to regress, right? If you think that Lamar Jackson is somewhere between MVP level and what he was his rookie year, I get that, right? But that offense is unstoppable, even if Lamar Jackson is halfway in between where he was last year and where he was this year, right? And that defense just got better somehow, right? They got Patrick Queen. They have Calais Campbell to rejuvenate that defensive line that hasn't had really good any pass rush in a while since T. Sizzle left. So yeah, I think they're just gonna get better. Try again next year, Bengals. Joe Burrow should come into the league and be one of the better rookie quarterbacks we've seen in a while, but that's not enough to carry that pretty bad offensive line in a really hard division to any sort of major success. Now, I say this, right, but there's definitely a scenario where that offense and defense puts it together because, who was their first round pick last year at tackle? That was a pretty good prospect, but he got injured, right? Like something like that could make their offensive line at least average, maybe depending on how good he is this year. And then if that happens, then that offense entirely opens up, and then the Bengals have thrown a lot of shots at the secondary, so that could hopefully improve their defense, maybe. Tempted to put them in a fringe playoff and definitely have them ahead of all of these teams. Right? This isn't exactly in order, but like I feel like kind of mini tiers within a tier, right? Like Bengals, and then it's Jags, Bengals and Bears, and then it's like Dolphins and Jags behind them in that tier. This one, nothing demonstrably wrong. So like the Titans, et cetera, et cetera. Probably put the Lions ahead of the Browns there. And yep, that's good. Cowboys, we're going into solid playoffs. I think their offense should be the best or top 3, and their defense should be bottom 3 in the league next year. So Chiefs, Chiefs style. I don't think that Dak Prescott's necessarily Patrick Mahomes, and that offense is not going to be super unstoppable. So I'm firmly on the train of they're a solid playoff team, but not necessarily Super Bowl contender. All right, yeah. Next team, Houston Texans. Let's see this French playoffs. Their division is so weak, and Deshaun Watson is so good that even without D-Hop, they have a pretty solid to good receiving core. Their offensive line is creeping towards average. It's not as bad as it was a couple of years ago. That offense should be good, or to good to great, and then that defense is probably going to be atrocious. But if they can, you know, if some pieces fall the right way, if some players develop like they expected them to, it could be average. Hopefully, right? For that Texans. I think it's definitely in the lower tier fringe playoffs. I think there's a scenario where Deshaun Watson is great, but the team goes 7-9, or there could be a scenario where he's great and they go 9-7 and they sneak into the playoffs. Kind of the definition of this tier. And I think 7-9 wins should be the expectations for this Texans team, and anything outside that range would pretty much surprise me. Let's go next team. Indianapolis Colts. Yeah, that feels right. If this is a hard one, because if Rivers is good, that Colts team is suddenly a solid playoff Super Bowl contender. If it takes them a while to adjust to the new system and a shortened off season, even if that system is great with Frank Reich, then this team is probably going to go 9-7, which is what I'm expecting. I think that they're going to be a team that tries to run the ball, play good defense, grit and grind, rely on Rivers only a few times a game, and they're going to slowly get their way to 9-7. And this division, the Jags, the Texans, the Titans, the Colts, right? They're just all going to be grinding for 9-7 and a division win, right? I'd be shocked if any of them got above 10-6, except for maybe the Colts, which is probably why I'm going to put them a little bit higher than the Texans. I'd be less surprised if the Colts going 10-6 than like most of the other teams in this division. Let's see this. Rams, again, a lot of fringe playoff teams thanks to this new playoff format and the fact that a lot of NFL teams have holes, but it's upside, right? Rams, if their offensive lineman they drafted like last year and like a couple of their young guys developed, then they might be a 9-7 team, a 10-6 team, right? We've seen what Sean McVay can do when his offensive line is at least functional. That offense could be insane. Chances are that doesn't happen, so we're putting them in. There's a possibility, probably not going to happen, but who knows? Chargers, another team in this tier. Notice how full it's getting. I think they're a great roster with some holes, namely at quarterback and offensive line. If Tyrod Taylor turns out to be decent, like a 16th starter type of player, like he's shown he's capable of being in spurts, this team is sky's the limit, right? Even division is on the hand, is in the title, given how good that defense can be. I'm putting this in French playoffs because one, they're the Chargers, and we have no proof that Anthony Lynn is a good coach. Two, they have a lot of talent, but that quarterback position is sketch, right? And Justin Herbert should not start because he's not ready to start yet. That's it on the Chargers, right? It's pretty easy. Super Bowl contender, easy Chiefs, Super Bowl the winners, right? That's a given, almost, right? Not much has changed. Still spotty defense, insane offense, greatest offense of all time, maybe, right? So give them their dues. Similar thing, similar spiel with the Saints. They got better with Emmanuel Sanders. Somehow that roster got better. And Malcolm Jenkins. So they're probably going to be the team that exits out of the NFC. So good luck to Sean Payton and Drew Brees. Hopefully gets his ring, his second ring. Solid playoffs, nope. French playoffs, nope. Man, I kind of wanted to believe in the Giants, but like thinking about like that offensive line, Jason Garrett as a head coach, they're probably just going to run the ball every play. Those receivers, which are solid but not spectacular, a lot of similar skill sets. That defense is going to be atrocious. Daniel Jones is probably going to regress in the public side just because there's no reason he would progress. He's changing systems, and the system that he's going into isn't even that good. They're in contention for the number one pick in my eyes. I don't really see a lot of upside that I see with like even the Jags. I feel like Gardner Minshew had a better rookie season, has a better receiving core. Probably not offensive line because of the work that they've done to address it, but like maybe probably a better defense. Um, even though their defense is going to be trash, both of the defenses are going to be trash. I just have more faith in the Jags and the Giants, and I have little faith in both. So, yeah, let's see, Eagles here. Anyone who disagrees with this one, because I know the Eagles can be a super contentious and divisive team on the internet, tell me why in the comments, right? When I look at this team, here's what I see. I see top 5 offensive line per usual, right? Similar cases with the Cowboys, right? I see top 10-ish quarterback per usual, similar case for the Cowboys. I think Carson Wentz has shown a little bit more, even though if you balance out their 4 years, the 4 years of data we have on both Wentz and Dak, it's pretty even. I think he did more with less last year, a lot more with less last year, which probably bumps him up in my head. And just his ability to create beyond what the offense gives him bumps him up in my head. So I think the Eagles probably have a slight edge in the division based on quarterback, based on receiving talent. That I think it was a historically injured receiving core, like the most that we've ever tracked or something. If you watch the games, they were putting out backup quarterbacks. I think Josh McCown was as a receiver. I forgot. It was like one of their backup QBs was listed as a receiver a couple weeks in the season. Like that's how bad the receiving situation got. They were picking up guys off the street who hadn't played in years to try and spark some life into that core. Last year, just based on the amount of injuries. This year, their starting tight end group looks like they're starting the weapons Carson Wentz has, barring injury this year. Just listing them off: Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, possibly two top 10 tight ends on one team. Alshon Jeffrey, solid, just possession type receiver. You can trust him. Good hands. Nice contested catch and route running. Deshaun Jackson as the deep threat. And if he gets injured, you have Jalen Reagor, who can do a lot of similar things that he does to stretch the field. And if he gets injured, you have Marquise Goodwin, who can do a lot of the things that those guys can do, stretching the field. And we've seen, like, a small sample size, of course, but we've seen what Carson Wentz can do when a player can actually stretch the field. And that's good things. J.J. Arcega, maybe he develops, not really. He doesn't even need to in this offense, given the weapons that they have. Miles Sanders, right? You could add the bit as like the 5th option on receiving as a receiving threat. Defensively, a lot better than Cowboys. Fletcher Cox, that D line, looking great as ever. Linebacker core is young. They have room for improvement. Even if they're not good, the defense is probably going to be average to good, even if they're okay. That secondary massively improved with Darius Slay, right? And a couple other pieces that they've grabbed in the offseason to help bolster that another part of their team that was severely injured last year. So I am all in on the Eagles. Just tell me why I'm wrong, please. Like, I don't see a position group that's bad on the team for like a couple years in a row now, just based on Howie's ability to find talent and accumulate it. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where like they're not one of the most complete rosters in the league, right? Just tell me, please. All right. Steelers, fringe playoffs. I put them below the Browns, which is a controversial pick. I put them below the Browns in that division because we really haven't seen Big Ben be a good decision maker in about 2 years now, right? He got injured in his throwing arm, I believe. And coming back from that, A1 from Big Ben from like 3 years ago, right? that's a bit of a stretch for me. They've lost AB. If you think Deontay Johnson is going to magically be able to replace that, I don't know. You're just going to be good per usual. That offensive line is probably going to continue to regress. It's getting older. They lost their offensive line coach to Denver like last year. So that defense, while it was amazing, it vastly overperformed thanks to Mika Fitzpatrick. That secondary outside of him is very much suspect. Very much suspect. Um, that pass rush is great, but there's one person on that defense one starter on that defense gets injured and the whole thing falls apart. Not a lot of depth, especially in the secondary. So I am not excited, not super. I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers were one of those teams where, wow, we were surprised that they have the top 5 to 10 pick, you know, next year, just based on natural regression and how defenses. It's hard to have a great defense year after year. Just look at the Bears, right? Look at what teams have Jags, right? They literally the year just because they couldn't move the ball, their defense regressed and they were going to launch short fields and they just weren't able to stop the fly. The Tampa Bay Bucks had a pretty good defense last year, but based on how volatile that offense was, it kind of skewed a lot of the stats. So just it's hard. And if I look like a fool and Big Ben comes in, he's comeback player of the year, and the Steelers lead 10-6, I also wouldn't be surprised, but I just don't have enough confidence in that set of that scenario. Then I do. Big Ben comes back and he's a shell of his former self, and he retires next year. That's where I am right now. Tell me why I'm wrong again, right? Like, tell me why, in the comments. Not this isn't like hostile. Just like I legitimately want to know opinions that aren't the same as mine, because I don't really see a lot of ways the Steelers team is going to be anywhere close to the expectations that, like, what's their over under, like 9.5. So like people are expecting them to win 10 games with those question marks. I don't know. Broncos, French playoffs, right? A lot of teams are in French playoffs just because there's a large tier here of teams that are good-ish, average to good-ish, and I think the Broncos fall into that category. Everything depends on Drew Lock. If Drew Lock is the player that Broncos fans think he is, this team goes here, right? If he's, like every other drafted quarterback in the second round, then this team goes here or here, right? This is, in my opinion, just the perfect equilibrium for this team. I think 7.5 or whether the last over under was pretty good, because if Drew Lock is good, then this team is like up there, right? It's up there. This defense with Vic Fangio leading it could be great. Bradley Chubb, Von Miller, Justin Simmons, right? Some young corners that they're trying to develop. Yeah, this could be great or it could be trash. There's not a lot in between I see for the Broncos, barring like massive skewage in terms of like turnover, luck, and stuff like that. Packers here. I don't think they're in the same tier with like the Cowboys, the Browns, the Lions, and the Bucks in my eyes. I think A-Rod is regressing, although he's probably still a top 12 quarterback in the league. He's regressing, so he's not really able to carry subpar rosters anymore. I don't think they did a lot to address their wide receiving group, and I think they're going to spend a lot of their time trying to copy the Niners, even though they don't have the personnel to do so, and they don't really have the offensive mind to do so. So they're going to be doing a lot of inefficient things and worse than the Niners do. So with the worst defense, probably, right? Yeah, I don't really get the methodology of this team, and I think the Lions should be in the driver's seat in this division. And in my opinion, like they're behind the Vikings too. So unless we see vintage Aaron Rodgers, I don't really see this team really going as far as they went last year. They were basically a 9-7 team who had a lot of lucky breaks, and they squandered their opportunity. So I think that, in 2 or so years, this is going to be Jordan Love time. Let's see, Carolina. Try again next year. This try again next year list could easily be fringe playoffs, but it's a little bit of combination of upside, the upside I perceive this team has to be a solid playoff, a deep playoff contender, as well as because like Carolina they have the roster to be able to like 8-8, 9-7 sneak in, sure, but like I think it's a lot more likely to get 6 to 7 wins, and that's really why I put them here. I don't think that there's some on the same level as like the Chargers, the Texans, the Broncos, the Colts, the Steelers, the Rams, the Packers, right? I can't put them on the same tier as those teams. They just don't have the talent. But I think they're making a lot of good decisions in order to be good like a year from now, 2 years from now. Raiders. The only thing that's stopping me from putting them in this tier is the fact that Jon Gruden is a pretty good head coach. I think their offense should be good-ish, but like that defense is going to be atrocious. Again, I'll put them here. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Jon Gruden is the only reason they're going to try again next year, just based on the performance he put last year, putting a team that should not have gotten like 7 wins or whatever they got, 2 7 wins. They were very much like a 4-win team based on talent, but I have to give him props, right? Same thing with Brian Flores, right? They got him to 5 wins. They should have been an 0-16 team, just based on talent. So I got to give those coaches props. I got to put them and try again next year because they could easily prove me wrong and go like 8-8, right? And I guess I'd look like a fool, but hey, that's how it is. Number 1 pick. I love where the Redskins are going. I don't like Ron Rivera himself said he's not trying to get cheap wins. So that tells me they have job security, and that also tells me they're not afraid to take. So I don't think they have the roster to really compete anyway. And if they recognize that and they realize, well, let's see what Dwayne Haskins is, and if he's trash, let's get Trevor Lawrence, right? So I'm all for that, and I respect that, but I don't think they're going to be all that successful this year. Maybe in 2 years. Cardinals. I put them firmly above all the teams in fringe playoffs. Why? Because, it's second-year quarterback jump, Kyler Murray, right? He got better throughout the year. Pretty standard kind of progression things in that area. Their offensive line got pretty much better. They're probably still going to be bad, but it got better based on the additions of like Josh Jones. That's it. But Josh Jones is a pretty good prospect, and I think he's going to be an improvement at whatever tackle spot they put him at. That receiving core is starting to look pretty good. Christian Kirk, D-Hop, Andy Isabella, Fitz. They'll just pop 5 wide, and then like have like Kenyon Drake, who was pretty good, very good last year when they handed him the rock. So this defense should be better. The young guy should improve. Who did they have across from Patrick Peterson? It wasn't Greedy Williams. It was the cornerback. I forgot what his name was, but like it was pretty good. I think it's first round prospect. So he develops, that secondary develops, pretty young defense, and this team is suddenly looking like top 10 offense, top 15, 16 defense, and solid playoff team in a pretty hard division. All right, Bills. All right, solid. You go there because they have the best roster in the AFC East. They might actually have the worst quarterback in the AFC East. There's a scenario in which Josh Allen is the worst quarterback in that division, and I don't know if that's a scenario that's all that far-fetched. I think that he wasn't the best. He wasn't even the second best quarterback last year in that division, right? I think Sam Darnold did more with less, even though maybe not on the stat sheet, but like just watched him play. right? Like how that offense, like with and without him, I think he's just a more valuable quarterback. There's a scenario that last year Josh Allen was the fourth best quarterback in that division, right? Tom Brady, Sam Darnold, depending on how you think of him. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick was very interestingly valuable, right? He took that team to 5 wins that should not have been a 5-win team. And if you really looked at him in some of those games, he was popping off. So I don't know what to say, Bills fans. I think you're a little bit too high on your mans, and this is a big prove year for him, right? Don't be the Bears fans of last year and just blind yourself to what you see on the field just because you want it to happen, right? The Bills are doing everything they can to make Josh Allen succeed. Trade for Stephon Diggs. They put an amazing roster around him. If he does not succeed this year, then I think it's time to exit. So yeah, if he doesn't start looking like a franchise quarterback. Seattle, they're like the best fringe playoff team. They're borderline solid playoff team. They're just always gonna they're just a 10-6, 9-7 type team always. So, this is a really stacked kind of conference in the NFC. So maybe 9-7 isn't enough to get in, right? Russell Wilson's only gone under like 9-7 like once, and I think maybe if ever they were all in his career. So there's not much more to say. They're consistently good-ish. They're still consistently good, maybe not great. That's why I put them there. I think like these teams, like at all these 10 teams, all have at least potential to get hot and like actually make a Super Bowl. I think Seahawks are kind of pushing that. I think they might be there, but like they just if Russell Wilson plays like prime Aaron Rodgers next year, then they'll be like they could have a chance. They have a chance to win it all, but I can't really bet on that. That roster is just absolutely atrocious, and there's not much else to say. I think the Seahawks coaching and front office is a little bit overrated. They're not really a team that is able to build around their players. They more like have a scheme, have an idea, have an identity, and want their players to fit into that box instead of really, building the scheme, the identity around what their players can actually do, which I think caps their upside of it, right? They're never going to be Baltimore. They're not going to be the Eagles. They're never going to be New Orleans, right? They're not going to be KC. They're never going to be the Niners, right? They don't know how to build around their players. Now, that being said, if they draft insanely like they did during that Seahawks dynasty, that Legion of Boom era, where they were just popping off all pros like every year, then they can be a dynasty again. But I don't think that that's really sustainable long term. And as we've seen in the last 4 or so years, that's been the MO. So yeah, Jets. Jets. All right, this is gonna be like one of my other hot takes. We're putting them either here or here. Here, I'm putting them there. Second year in a row, shocker! Wow, Sam Darnold got mono last year, and the Jets still went 9-7. He was gone for over a month, and they went. I mean, not 9-7. The Jets went 7-9. He was gone for over a month, and then went 7-9. So that's all I gotta say for everyone hating on Adam Gase, hating on Sam Darnold. I have no idea how he got that team to 7-9. He did though. And that is a pound in the back to Gase with probably the worst offensive surrounding core in the league last year for Sam Darnold, right? Like his best receiver was Robbie Anderson, who should be your wide receiver 3. And that offensive line was atrocious, like almost like Cardinals level bad. And you could really tell the difference between when Luke Falk was in there and when Sam was in there. So I think that this should be a pretty good, not pretty good roster. It's gonna be a pretty bad roster. But if it can get to average, if that offensive rounding core can get to average, and we can really see what Dan can do, they can win that division just based on how weak it is. And prelude to that, we're putting the Patriots like here, right? They're like in that. They're behind the Seahawks because I trust the quarterback, but like Bill Belichick is the greatest coach of all time, so I can't put them any lower. It's just like that offense was already bad with Brady in, so like to suggest that it can get better this year would imply that Jarrett Stidham was going to have to be better than Tom Brady was last year, which was like the 12th best quarterback. So I don't know, 10 to 12 best quarterback, right? He was okay, but like, is Jarrett Stidham really going to be better than Tom Brady in his first starting year with no weapons around him outside Julian Edelman, who's like 33? I don't know. That defense lost a lot of pieces, but I trust Bill Belichick to put together a good defense. But they had a lot of turnover luck, so that's probably going to regress. So it's going to be a top 10 defense. It's going to be, I don't know, like game breaking, like stats wise defense. Everyone's like, wow, like it was this year. No, that's probably not going to happen. That offense is still going to be bad. This team could be a try again next year team that I'm overvaluing because of the name, right? Like, at best, it's a fringe playoff team, which honestly, I'm putting it down here. It's below the Bills in my eyes. It's at best a fringe playoff team, a 9-7, 10-16. At best, that's absolute peak, right? A lot of these other teams, if everything goes right, they might even go 12-4-ish, but like not really. I just don't think. I think there's probably less than 1% chance that like this offense is actually good, and this defense is more likely than not going to regress towards the mean. So, all right, this is around where I think all the teams should go. Now, some of the left to right rankings aren't really accurate, but I try to get that around as close to what I think is possible, right? Like I think the Browns and should be better than the Cowboys, and the Cardinals and the Jets are kind of like a little bit below that. But I have a lot more faith in them than the other fringe playoff teams, so I put them in that tier because I think they edged over the border. And then tell me about the Eagles because I feel like that's a pretty controversial pick. And then any other teams you think that you disagree with, like the Patriots, the Packers, are a little bit not agreeing with consensus. The Browns, maybe. The Cowboys, probably, just because Cowboys fans be like that. All right, so solid. See you guys when the season starts, and comment on this video after the season telling me how either I'm the smartest man on this earth or like I'm an idiot. So solid. Let's go. Let's go. Hopefully we get it. Not Corona didn't stop it. So